What's up, everybody? Tony Beast Guy here. We're going to be talking about Samoa Joe in the WWE. Now, there's something very, very interesting about Samoa Joe coming into WWE because they kind of did it as a shocker for NXT TakeOver, and it was very, very cool having him debut at the end of the show and face off with Sami Zayn, but just wanted to see what kind of contract does this Samoa Joe guy, the submission specialist, have in the WWE. Well, it's being reported that Samoa Joe has a new type of deal with WWE where he's able to work indie dates in the future. This is very few restrictions on where he can work, and his deal is described similar to that as Rhino. And if you know with Rhino kind of can do all the indie stuff that he wants, but he can also work the WWE schedule when they need him for NXT. And it's kind of cool because the way that NXT really does work is that they do, they meet, they do the tapings, and then they do some of the house shows and all that stuff. So they do all the live events to keep it going while they're doing the taping. So they do the taping, they tape a few episodes, and then they go do live events, and then they do it all over again. So the talent is free to pretty much be open if they're not going to do the house show stuff, which is kind of cool, just to let people know that Samoa Joe is sort of it's a free agent in the WWE. And what's cool about it is that this is something that leaves Samoa Joe open to even do Ring of Honor. And as you know, in the past, WWE really likes Ring of Honor, I think. I mean, they've mentioned it on DVDs before. They've talked about it before. So it's kind of cool that they're leaving Samoa Joe open for Ring of Honor, and so open that coming up on June 19th for Best in the World, it will be The Addiction, Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian versus AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. Holy crap, that is awesome. And what's crazy about that is that his stock is like going up and up and up, and then he's just getting more work on the independent scene. And he had that t-shirt that came out. I don't know if you saw it. It was the one that he wore on NXT, and it said Submission Specialist, and it actually sold out super, super fast. I wasn't able to get one. I went to go get one, and the large have already sold out, so I was like, well, I can't get one. But this is really, really crazy that they're letting Samoa Joe do all the indie stuff. And I think this is a good idea, but I don't know how good of an idea this is. I mean, I really, really like the idea where they let their talent, like some of the guys like Samoa Joe, who already had, like, say that he had previous dates booked, right? He already has previous engagements. I understand, let him fulfill those and then go to WWE. But what I've heard, which I don't know if this is 100% confirmed, but I heard that Joe is actually allowed to do all the indie stuff until he's promoted to the main roster. So that means that if he was to go to WWE, and I don't know what the plans are with him, but I'm just saying if he was to go to NXT and say they kept him there for a year, he could work all the indie stuff for a year, and then when he gets called up to the main roster, he could get called up to the main roster. I mean, I think this is a brilliant idea. I always thought that TNA should do this, and they haven't done it like this, but I always thought that TNA should book indie talents for the tapings. And only the like you can get some big indie names to just come do the tapings, and you don't have to have them do the house shows. Just get them to do the tapings, and then they can go do all the indie stuff they want and keep doing that. And then you just have like, it would be such a huge, awesome thing. And that's like, I think what NXT is trying to do. And I know like Brian Kendrick and Rhino and those guys are like okay to do all the indie stuff, and that's fine. Like they had the one-off with Tommy Dreamer in Philly, and I think that's what is going to set NXT apart, and what's going to make the brand grow is by giving these guys these flexible contracts. Now, if you want to get those main guys who are like, all right, we want to push you, we want to get you to the main roster, you want to make it in WWE, here's what you can do. But if those guys that just want to, like a Rhino or a Tommy Dreamer or a Brian Kendrick, I don't know what Brian Kendrick's contract's like right now, but if you want to get those guys to come in and just be like, you know what, you could do your indie stuff, you can come into WWE and do that, but you're really just going to be an NXT guy. And then they're like, okay, I'm fine with that. That's cool. NXT is awesome. I can work for a minimum amount of money on NXT, get myself over, go to the indies, do my stuff. And it's cool. It's a good idea. And not for like a Samoa Joe. I don't think this really fits Samoa Joe. I like it that he can still do the independent stuff and he stay, because my feeling is that WWE wants you to keep your commitments. it's my point, from my feeling. If I was Vince McMahon and a guy came in and we're like, hey, we want to hire you to WWE, the guy's like, well, I have all these previous commitments. Let me finish them out. And Vince would be like, yes, we like a guy like that. If I was a business owner and a guy came to me and said, hey, I'd love to join your company, but I have all this other previous stuff to do first. Can I do that? And then I'll be, gung-ho for you. I'd be like, yeah, because that sets an example that this guy is willing to commit to me, do all my stuff, and then if he does go elsewhere, he's already committed to me, so it sets a good tone for the guy. So I see that with Samoa Joe, but I don't know what kind of deal they're trying to go with Samoa Joe. Are they trying to bring Samoa Joe up to the main roster? Are they trying to keep him in NXT as sort of like it's really cool though, because having Samoa Joe in NXT is freaking awesome, because that's a guy who deserves to be on the main roster. He's been around. He's had tryouts in WWE, and then there's a lot of guys that they could just scoop up and do the same thing with. I mean, there's unlimited potential with this NXT brand, and I think they're doing it so smart, so smart. They're starting to tour around. They're starting to make it its own brand. They're making it like a big thing, and it's completely different from the main WWE roster, but it is also still a developmental territory for the main roster. It's really cool concept right here that they have in WWE, where you can learn that live event schedule. You can learn the wrestling schedule. Like the guys that first come in, they go down there, they learn how to do all the, because I've seen the Finn Balor, where he had to stand on the top rope and point, and the refs were telling him what to do to get ready for television. Because that's the thing a lot of indie guys don't know. When you go to independent wrestling, you don't have to worry about all the cameras. Yes, some indie feds have that, where you have all the cameras, you got to play to the cameras. But the WWE really wants to get those guys to learn that. Even like New Japan Wrestling, Finn and I know the Young Bucks and those guys always say that, yeah, they never really tell you where to look at what camera, so they just let us go out there and wrestle. But in WWE, you got to learn all that. You got to look at the cameras. You got to be familiar with the way it works. Television wrestling is different than live wrestling, and you can tell that by just going to a live event. So it's a cool little concept they have. You can get those guys to come and learn it, and then they can travel and they can do all that. And when they're ready, they can go up to the main roster. So it's very interesting to see the way that this is working out. If this is something that is going to really be prevalent until Joe makes it up to the main roster, I think that's a fantastic idea. There's a million different ways to get guys on the main roster other than wrestling. You could do promos, you can do video packages, you could do whatever you want, but you can get it all taped in one day. I know at first I said, don't do it with Joe, but I'm kind of having a change of heart like halfway through this video. It's kind of hard though. There's traditional wrestling where you come in, you go to developmental, you go to NXT, you go to WWE, and that's your career path. But I mean, the way I see it is, they brought in Bully Ray for a one-off at the Rumble, and they brought in Tommy Dreamer for a one-off at a Philly NXT event. And I mean, is this something? Well, let me ask you guys then, because I'm kind of torn on this. I really don't know if this is a good idea or not. I like the idea, but I don't know. Okay, there's two ways to think of it. Let's think of this really quick. One, you can bring in all these international guys, you can bring in all these weird guys, you can bring in all these guys, and you don't have to restrict them to the WWE schedule. And I don't know that New Japan has a clause in their contracts that say you can't work for WWE. I don't know how that works, but the way I see it, you could bring in a guy like AJ Styles. Say, hey, AJ, come on in. All we need you is for these dates. If you're open for that, let's do it. And when we get you through those dates, you can feel free to do whatever you want with your career. And that's awesome, because this is the fact you're looking at. You get this guy who's on WWE, his stock goes up. He goes and travels to the Indies. Guys see him at the Indies, like the smart fans, and they're like, wait, aren't you working for WWE? Yeah, well, I'm also, working here. Or like the guys that don't know he's working for WWE, they're just like, I love AJ Styles. Let's go see him at Ring of Honor. And they're like, AJ's like, yeah, dude, I'm at, you should check me out on NXT. And they're like, what? You're on NXT? Yeah, didn't you check it out? And then you get more fans to NXT. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here we're going to look at, because It's good to get that exposure and let the guys do their stuff because they already have previous commitments. And then it's very, very cool where you can, like I said, you can film all this stuff in one day, and then they're ready to go onto their indie dates, and then come back when they're ready for the specials and all that stuff, and then get them up to the main roster. But there's also that off chance that, hey, what if they do work an indie show? What if they go to the independents, and what if they get injured at an independent show? That ruins their WWE chances because, like, well, we filmed all this storyline stuff and now you're hurt. Good job. We can't use you. Dumb idea. Goodbye. I don't know. It's a very tough call. On one end, I like it because there's potential to bring in a lot of names that wouldn't otherwise come into WWE. But on the other end, I'm kind of partial to that traditional WWE where you come in, you go to the NXT Performance Center, you train, you go through NXT, and then you make it to the main roster, and you're exclusive to WWE. And this is really the first time that they're leaving it open for a guy to go out and work independence while he's still a WWE guy. So let me know, guys. Is this a good thing? Do you think Samoa Joe should have this kind of open contract where he can go work the independent shows? Or do you think he should be locked into a WWE exclusive contract where he has to go to the Performance Center, he has to work those dates, he has to train with the WWE NXT guys, and then make it from there to the main roster? I don't know. You let me know in the comment section below. Again, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. As always, Tony Beats Guy, frag out.